Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about doing some assembling now. So we've had a bunch of parts, and now we need to talk about putting them together. So let's start by creating a new document. Call it last name, first initial, and assembly. Let's call it assembly practice. You can delete this later or move it to your trash. All right, because we're just using this for practice right now. So let's go ahead and sketch. Doesn't matter what plane, and view normal as always. And let's just start by making a bunch of shapes. So I'm gonna make a rectangle, and then make a slightly smaller rectangle. Now I happen to be using center point. But I'll show how to do this with corner rectangle. So let's also make a long kind of skinny one. Okay. Then let's make one kind of like your first, but a little bit smaller. Something like that would work out. Okay. And then we're going to make some circles and just place some circles. It needs to be a little smaller than we'll fit into here. So we lock it under the center here. Now to put it right in the middle, remember you've got those little yellow squares that will show up that we're holding it to the midpoint. And that-ish. And now let's make these two circles equal in size to each other. Equal. I know everything's blue because we haven't defined anything where it is. The only thing we've got is equal size circles. Okay, that'll work. So go ahead and finish your sketch and extrude. Now here's what I'd like you to extrude. We're going to extrude around this to leave a hole in it. This one, no, I take it back. We'll just extrude all of them just like this around the hole. And then we're going to, oh, I didn't hit extrude first. I just hit the profiles. That's okay. Now make it look about like this. We didn't define the size, so just adjust it so, it's like that. Maybe I'll make it 0.5, just, something that looks approximately like that. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, one of these things is going to have a hole in it. The other one is going to have a shaft sticking out. So I need to go back to this sketch and turn it on, and I'm going to extrude just that guy and make it stick out a ways. I don't know, let's try 3. See how that goes. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so you have kind of a helicopter looking thing, okay? All right, now what should have happened when you did this is we should end up with 3 parts because the first extrude that you did recognized that they were not touching each other and made them all new. If it said add, then just change that to new to make sure that there are 3 parts. All right, so we've got our 3 parts now. Now down at the bottom of your tabs is assemblies. And we're going to put these 3 things together in various ways just to explore the different types of joints that there are for putting things together. So go ahead and click on assembly, and we're going to insert, and we have all these different parts. Okay, so I think I need to do them individually. I've never tried to just put in the parts studio. Maybe I'll try that. And click. Yeah, that works. Okay, so it gives them all separate, puts them all in. Okay, that works. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. I should have hit the check mark. Okay, so just because I don't want to see it, I'm going to turn the origin off. All right, so let's talk about all this different stuff that we've got in an assembly. So up here along your toolbar are all these different mates or constraints. Joints, if you want to call them that. So it's ways of holding things together. If you hover over something long enough, it will tell you how to do it. So I'm going to show you what these things mean. let's start off by putting this part and this part together. Now, one of the things that is going to happen is you can move everything around in space by holding down on your mouse button and moving it. It is always a good idea to take one of your parts and fix it in space so that everything relates to that. Otherwise, things get wonky and move around and it gets weird. So go to one part and we're going to fix. And notice it will show up here in your browser that one of your parts, it'll say one of your parts is fixed or more. And it's that one that's fixed in space. Now you can't fix all of them because then if you try and put them together, you've made an impossible situation. Because you can't take two things that are fixed in space and now say, I want to put them together. You're trying to create two things at once. All right. So let's talk about some things that we can do with this. So first of all, we have a bunch of different things that involve cylindrical shapes. Okay. There is a revolute, there is a slider, and there is a cylindrical. So let's talk about the difference between those three things. And this is usually for stuff that's round, although it does work for other parts also. So let's say I want to put this part into this hole, but I want it to stay there, but I want it to spin. Okay. If I want it to spin, then I am going to choose the cylindrical mate. Notice it shows you that it can, actually, I'm sorry, I am going to use the revolute mate because the revolute will allow it to spin, but not allow it to move back and forth through the hole. So when you click a mate, what's going to happen is it's going to give you the window showing up and it is asking you to find these things called mate connectors. So I wish I could zoom in on them, but I think as I zoom in, it just changes the side. So that is a mate connector that shows up. And what happens is the blue, green, and red are showing your axes. Okay, blue stands for Z, green is Y, and red is X. Now, these don't necessarily show up in the same way, you'll notice, as your view cube does, but it will relate to another one. So if I say I want that right in the center of that guy, it's showing me, and you can hover over it to see which direction the blue is, for example, which is most of the time what we want to line up. Now I notice that it says that I've connected those. Now if I come over here, notice the blue goes in the same direction. So I'm right in the middle of this circle, and if I click on that, it now gives me my revolute mate. Okay. And if I did it the wrong way, you can flip it, okay, to go the other direction. But I did want it to go that way. And now we can say, okay, check mark. Okay. Now it leaves this open because it assumes you want to do it again. Okay. But once you're done making those mates, you can close that little window. So remember, this is fixed in space. So now this guy can spin around. Okay. And what's hard to see is this cylinder is actually spinning too, but you just can't see it. Okay. But it won't move in and out. Now, I'm going to go over here. Let's go over here and just delete that because we're going to show some other things. Now, let's talk about if I want it to be able to spin and move in and out through that hole, then we've got this thing called cylindrical mate. So it's really the same thing. We're going to click on that and click over here on the center and line those things up. Say, okay, let me get rid of that window for a moment. But this time, not only will it spin, but it will slide back and forth. So that is a cylindrical mate. So remember, the revolute held it in place, whereas cylindrical will allow it to slide and spin. Now, let's say I want it to slide, but I don't want it to spin. So delete that. Okay, we're going to move this guy out of the way a little bit. And that one is called a slider. Okay, so what happens is, now we got to be careful because it's going to be in whatever orientation this is right now. a slider mate will allow it to slide along that axis, but it won't spin. So slider means I'm going to say, okay, I want that and that. Okay, rid of that window. And now it will slide, but I can't, if I'm trying to spin it, it won't spin. It just slides. Okay, so those are the three things. Let's go ahead and leave that slider mate in here. Now, let's say for whatever reason, I want to put this block onto here and I want to center it in the middle. Difficult thing to do. There's a couple things that we can do here. One is called a planar mate. Now, a planar mate takes any two planes and it puts them on the same plane. They can move around, okay, but the planes are joined together. So one of the things that we could do is say, I would like to do a planar mate. We're going to take this plane here. Now it shows you the plane. It's also showing you a center point, but that's not going to connect directly. It's just going to take this plane and lock it to another plane. Okay. Now it might stick there, but it's not going to stay in that spot. So, okay. Now I can take this part. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Okay. And notice it will move around, but it's glued essentially to one plane to another. All right. Now let's say I want to put that right smack in the middle. So there's a couple different ways of doing this, and we'll practice that. One is that we can do a planar command. Now first I need a measurement. Okay, so I'm going to have to get rid of my camera for a minute. Measure. I'm going to measure from this side over here to that side over there. And the distance is 0.313. I should have made it to a size, but so I can copy that, I believe. Whoops. All right, let's try that again. Measure from there to there. I can copy that. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to deal with this. I've got that copied. So I want this distance from here to here to be whatever that is minus or whatever this space is, which is the whole thing divided by 2, right? So I need to get that other measurement also. So we're again going to measure now from here to here, right? Which is 1.952. So I'm going to have to write these down because 1.952, and let's see if there's more decimal places. Not 1.951788. Now, this is why you've got to make things the right size, but we're just practicing right now anyway. All right, so let's say that we want to put these together. I'm only going to do it one way, and we'll practice that. So again, a planar mate. I'm going to say I want this plane. Sometimes you have to hover a little bit to get it to do the right thing. And that plane, now it's putting them together. Now notice that it flipped it though. So I think I can flip my axis or reorient it. Now it should put it back the way that it was before because it's ignoring this other planar joint for now. But we can play around with it and see what happens. Now, this time I want to create an offset though, okay? I want to create my offset. It's going a Z direction, which is along that blue. That's good. That's the way I want it to go. Now, right now, Z is pointing towards me, so I think I'm going to have to go a negative. And it's whatever the first one was which I still have copied, minus the second one, 1.95. Now your numbers will be different. And that's all in parentheses, and the whole thing is divided by 2. Now, I hope this works. Hey, okay, so cool. We're right in the center. Now, I'm not going to worry about the other one. So notice that this now can move back and forth because I haven't done the other one. So I'm just going to place it right there. All right. So that was planar. Boy, it was a rough road getting to that one. Let's talk about another way of doing this. And let's delete both of these planar constraints. Move this guy out of the way. Now, there's another thing that we can do and create your own mate connector. So when you mate something, it's finding center points, corners, edges, things like that that you might want to reference. But I can also create my own mate connector and put it on an entity, and it's wanting to put it somewhere. Now, remember how we could hold the shift key down? So right now, it's asking me where I want to put that. So right now, I don't want it in those places, but I'm going to click that, and I want to move it. Okay. Now I can move it whatever direction I want, and you can use things like, let's go negative. This is just for practice. Negative 0.5. And again, enter will get you a preview. Let's try -1. And again, yours is different. You're just playing around with it. -1. Enter will give you a preview. Cool. And I'll go Y direction, which is, notice the green is Y. Let's try going 0.5 up on that. Enter will give you a preview. So let's say that's the right location. Okay, and I've created my own mate connector now. So now we can take this thing and we're going to do our last joint, which is one that you're going to find yourself using a lot, which is fasten. Now, what fasten does is it takes one part, joins it to another part, and fixes all degrees of freedom. So degrees of freedom means that it can either spin or move, and we're removing all of those and just joining it together rigidly. Okay, so fastened. I'm going to come up here to this corner now. Notice that this thing is going, it's not going, there we go. That's the way I want it to go. It's hard to see, but right now that's not going perpendicular to this face. Now it is. Click on that. Okay. And then we will click on the mate connector that I created. And now that part is rigid. Okay. I can turn off the visibility of the mate connector if I want. All right. So that's the basics of assemblies. You'll be doing this other thing with some other stuff, and then finally putting your own stuff together. All right, so here's the last thing I'd like you to do here is we're going to right click and hit show all. And what that's going to do is it's going to show us all of those little constraints that are in there. So I'd like you to have those on and take a picture that includes your browser so I can see these mates and your name up there. All right. Enjoy, have fun. See you next time.